Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you are. Thank you again for joining us for day 4 and powering through this awesome week with all sorts of great presentations running through. Today we begin with the good folks at GSMA. We've got Bruno and Christopher with us, so take it away.
Thanks for the time and enable us to talk about what we are doing over the last year and months. So this time we're talking about the GSMA Interoperability Test Platform, and the theme for this discussion will be transforming the DFSP onboarding process. And what we're doing here, we will start with a short update about the lab, and then a recap about what is the GSMA Interoperability Test Platform. And then we share in the last updates focus on the onboarding features that we achieved over the last months. So if we move to the next one, we are talking about mobile money API. We have 3 updates about this topic. First one, we are about to release an industry report. I think most of you already saw last time the Towards Seamless Integrations Part 1, which was a result of research as well with several industry stakeholders about API. This time we're expanding that, looking for 30-party API integrations and how that's helping the mobile money ecosystem and what kind of integrating and how we can help to accelerate. Closer to that, we also launching a compliance verification service. The goal of this service will be to standardize and harmonize mobile money API specification across all the operators and help the ecosystem to accelerate the growth using a unique and harmonized API there. So that will be launching soon in a couple of months from now. Also looking to mobile money API, we have a new release version, the release 1.1, with a couple of enhancements there on the APIs that we already have and some new APIs as well. So like how to create accounts and giving more flexibility for service providers, and then they will be able to enjoy more what the operators are having as a service. So moving to the ITP, what is ITP? Not sure if everyone kept. I know that over the time we quite have a lot of new people of the convenient. So just to share what is that and a short recap. So the Interoperability Test Platform was created around 1 year ago, exactly, if I'm not mistaken, where we talk about that on January on the Mojaloop convenience as well. So we are looking to support service providers who at the time was not able to connect to Mojaloop directly, so they would be able to use mobile money API, and also understanding how the whole interoperability ecosystem works. So in this sense, we have Mojaloop as a hub, 2 DFSPs connected as operators there, and we have a service provider who is able to connect over the mobile money API, or if you're a DFSP, you can connect directly to the platform on Mojaloop, and we'll be able to simulate all the entities that you're seeing in this screen. And in this case, we're looking for an end-to-end test scenario, which will help everyone to understand how it works, how the API works, what kind of fields they need to use, and what the purpose they can use these API and how they can join a Mojaloop network. So why we build that? Again, just a recap. We try to enable the industry players in 2 key technologies, looking always on financial inclusion, support mobile money industry, how they can achieve interoperability, especially how they can test that. That's one of the main purposes on the platform. And of course, help the ecosystem to grow. That's a key for all the ecosystem on financial inclusion. And why to use that? We use real-world systems. You will see over the update, we have a lot of great features that is changing how the platform works and the possibilities that you have to do that. But we really believe that using the real systems, you will be able to see how the interoperability will actually works once you achieve production. We try to build that independent of the core, so trying to see on different views and how we can integrate and support the Mojaloop team as well once we find out misaligned on specifications and so on. So we talk a lot with Sen about that. We try to use as easy as possible. So we achieve a plug and play solution where without a key knowledge on Mojaloop or any kind of the APIs, you'll be able to create a session in use. Chris will demonstrate that later, and you guys will see again how to use that. And a key point, it's the free and open source, so anyone can use the platform. I think that's a key point. It's open to anyone to use. And again, for who is using that and have questions or suggestions, features that we'd like to use or see in the platform, just reach out to myself or Chris over Slack or issue a GitHub issue there. We're happy to assist you there. So moving to the Interoperability test platform updates, as I comment, we have a team for this presentation, which is transforming the DFSP onboarding. So before jumping into that, it's what is a technical DFSP onboarding? So how the journey happens, and we see that in 3 pillars. So first one is connectivity, second one is testing, and the third one is process. So process most of the times will be across all the other 2. So you need to have a standardized process for all DFSPs once they are onboarding on your platform. You need to have a centralized process in one place. So we see that's important because it's easier to manage everything and try to understand which is the stages each of DFSP will be there, and you can support them from testing to certification until you go live. If you're looking at the connectivity's point of view, it's a bit more technical. You need to ensure that the DFSP are able to connect to your test environment. You need to exchange security details between the DFSP and the hub, and you need to configure all the URL callbacks and everything to the DFSP. Sometimes, depending how you're doing that, and if the DFSP has more than one test environment, you need to do this kind of configuration several times. And that's sometimes not easy to everyone to understand and how to move forward on that. And of course, the most important part is the testing to ensure you can support the DFSP over their implementation. So implementation is always tricky. You're reading an API specification and how the system works, and people has different understanding on specifications. So it's a key point that you can support the DFSP over this journey so they can test the implementation before they're trying to go to a certification. And also looking on the hub point of view, it's to ensure the DFSP is compliant with the hub rules. So every hub using Mojaloop will have different business rules, and that's extremely important that over this onboarding process and the testing, you ensure that everything is correctly and tested before going to production, so you don't have surprise there. And as a last point, it's support the DFSP's different scenarios as well. Most times, once you are doing an onboarding, the hub operator will be looking on the compliant rules, the business rules, and if everything is okay to do there. But sometimes the DFSP wants to do some different testing, and the platform needs to enable them and allow and give it liberty to achieve that as well. So that's how we see the onboarding journey over these 3 pillars. And looking at these pillars, we could find some problems there. And that's what we are aiming to solve with the new release. So if you're looking over the 3 pillars again, and starting on the connectivity side, security configuration sometimes is hard. People still have issues to understand how AWS works, IOP data is traveling there, and multiple TLS, it's also sometimes hard, and exchanging certificates and everything. So we see that as a mostly problem that happens from time to time. Once you're testing, if you don't have a stable test environment, you can see messages not being achieved into the platform, it's losing on the network, and sometimes it's difficult to find the problem and where it is happening or how it's happening. And of course, once the message arrives, you need to have a tool who provides you some interesting feedback, so you're able to understand what is happening there. You want to see the detail of the message, you want to see the problem that is raising and where the problem is, so we can easily fix that. And a key point is a hub expected to have several DFSPs, and they scale that and they're growing, and the test environment needs to support all these parts. So you need to ensure that the DFSPs can connect in at the same time on the platform, and ensure that you have these in an easy way. On the testing side, sometimes it's difficult to simulate the business rules and how you can do that in the test environment. So you need to ensure that all the business rules it's present over the testing, not just covering if they're compliant with the API specification, but also on the knowledge on how the hub will operate. So some money limits that you can transfer and everything that need to be a way to test over this time. And of course, edge cases. So sometimes you want to reply with a 500 back to the DFSP to ensure that they are able to handle error cases and etc. And if you're using your live simulation, you don't want to turn off your switch. That's just too complicated. So sometimes it's difficult how you can achieve that part. And again, the custom requests from DFSP, it's these corner cases that they want to test, how you can solve that problem. Again, looking on the process, the DFSP onboarding is a key point for scale your network. So the process sometimes is long and taking too much time in each stage because you don't have the necessary tools in place and centralized information or the necessary support to achieve that on the DFSP side. So the process starts being too long and taking too much of your time and team to support the DFSPs. So looking on that direction, we try to see how we can change that and help any hub operator using the platform to achieve and fix those problems that we see over the discussions that we have with a big hub operator using Mojaloop, which is Mowali. So looking on that direction, the Streamline process, we see a few points here. So trying to solve a complex process that you have to a few steps and ensure that you can easily go live to a DFSP as fast as possible. So supporting the DFSP during development. So before going to a certification phase, you need to ensure that they are ready to integrate that. Trying to not using all your resources, focus on supporting the DFSP as well. So trying to create a self-test environment where the DFSP has all the information in one single place and they can try to figure out the problems without requesting support from you. So really a self-test environment there. Another point that we raise up about security is sometimes you're not ready with the security features. So you want to test your API integration without the security. So you need to be able to turn on and off those things. And then you can have maybe even two teams working at the same time, one working on security features, one working on API features, and able to test that at the same time in one single place and see the difference before going to the certification. Also, the DFSPs may have several test environments, and they may need support to test these different stages as well. So you need a place that you can connect it to the same DFSP with different stages on their own infrastructure as well. So their testing servers, their certification servers, of course, production, definitely not plugging in a testing platform, but would be even possible to achieve that. Also, once you're testing, and especially over certification, you usually don't have one person doing that. So it's key to you to be able to share the data between your organization and sometimes once needed with external people. So Chris will demonstrate later talking a bit a user group feature that we create where you're able to share your data across organization and create and add people outside of your organization. So if you work with an external party as your technology provider, they will be able to join the platform and see the results and join your testing team together to see the problems and how they can quickly fix that. And by the last part, as I comment, it's sometimes you need some internal testing, some custom test cases. So giving the flexibility to the DFSP to create these own test cases and how they can achieve that. So looking over this time, what we do here over this release, it's 3 key points: schema certification, streamlined onboarding process, and creating this flexibility on the custom business rules. So with that, we are helping operators hub to achieve a better onboarding process and scale fast, and having more DFSPs on their network, having less effort on their side. And that's what we were helping a big partner to achieve that. So as GSMA is always looking on how to help the members, we are joined with Mowali to create the Mowali Partner Onboarding Platform, which we are testing the final phases now and should go live anytime soon. And over this platform, GSMA is looking how we can also support MTM and Orange, who is the joint venture behind Mowali, and how we can help them to scale their operation and onboarding the DFSPs faster. So at the moment, we are just finalizing the test cases and the integration testing with Mowali, so then we can go live on their environment and they can offer this platform to all DFSPs who will be onboarding on Mowali Hub. So moving to a bit more technical, I will hand over to Chris so he can talk about the features that we're being including on this release and show to you that part. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Bruno. Yeah, so trying to continue that, the narrative that Bruno's been talking about, smoothing and that onboarding process. We've kind of identified 4 phases that DFSPs may go through as they're onboarding onto a Mojaloop Hub. That first phase, that first use case is perhaps exploration, where you've heard of Mojaloop and you know vaguely how it works, but you need to dive in a little deeper to figure out exactly what needs to happen. And we're supporting that use case by providing a fully simulated environment where you don't need to bring any system of your own. You can just watch the messages go back and forth and understand better what's going on. Once you've understood that, we might move into a self-testing phase where you have got your own system that you want to start testing, but you don't need to connect to a live switch. You don't need to connect to a real network in any way. You just want to check that your system works well in principle. And also we support that through creation of custom test cases, as Bruno mentioned, to allow testing for edge cases that maybe haven't come up before. Once you're confident in your own implementation, you then probably want to test how it works in a broader network. And so one of the big changes that we've made with this release is to allow for integration testing, where you have not just one, but multiple systems under test, all getting connected through the test platform. So you could have a live switch alongside your implementation, or you could have every single participant be a real participant, a real system, all being piped through the test platform, so you can have confidence and visibility into the messages that are being sent. Once everyone's confident in that at that level, you would probably move on to this final stage, which is the certification phase. And again, this process is less flexible. So rather than having full control over custom test cases, we provide a guided questionnaire to help DFSPs figure out what needs testing. But it offers a much clearer process to allow DFSPs to step through the system in a predictable and manageable way for the hub to verify their onboarding. Supporting all of these these use cases, we'll have all sorts of powerful functionalities. The test case editor, as we mentioned before, is a useful way to manage those custom test cases. And we've really reinforced the ability by adding templating to the test case editor in the next release. We've added these security features that Bruno mentioned, whereby you can enable and disable the MTLS connection without blocking the rest of your testing very easily. We've got the message log and the user group management that we mentioned in the last convening that allows for much more visibility into what's going on and much more management over bigger teams working on an onboarding project. And finally, we've added an audit log as well, so that the platform administrators can have full visibility and there's no risk of unexpectedly changing test cases, for example, and you can have a lot more confidence in the results that your certification process is giving. So with that kind of preliminary out of the way, I will jump into a demo. So we're looking here at the test platform on our staging server. And as I mentioned, the first thing that a new DFSP might want to do is to create a test environment for themselves to just explore an exploration sandbox to see what's going on and how Mojaloop works. So I can create a new test session as a DFSP. I'll go ahead and click test for now. And as I mentioned, we could select any number of systems under test, but right now we don't have any. We're just exploring. So I'm going to leave this blank and just continue clicking next. We can select any of the test cases that we might want. I specifically am going to look at this P2P send accepted transaction for today. And I'll click next again. Environments we'll talk about in a little bit. We can leave that blank for now. So I've now created this test session with my one test case that I can click on. And if I click on test flow, I can see the expected flow is that, probably a familiar one, we're going to send the quotes, get a response, and then send transfers and get a response through the Mojaloop Hub. And so whenever I want, I can go ahead and click run test case, and that will create a new test run. And what that is doing is every one of these messages on the left-hand side is getting sent one by one, and all of these test assertions are being applied to each test. So I can click through to any step in the process. I can see that the assertions have been validated, and perhaps more interestingly at this stage, I can click through and see the request body, the request headers, and the HTTP response for each stage. So this is quite a useful environment for, as I mentioned, a new DFSP just to figure out what's going on without having to worry about bringing their own system to test at all at this stage. But once they have built their own system and they're ready to experiment in a bit more of a meaningful way, they may want to create a new session. So I'll create another test session. And this time, as I mentioned, the next step that we foresee is this self-test mode where I just want to check that I've got my understanding correct. And I want to check that I'm sending the correct messages and that I'm receiving the messages that I was expecting to. So I'll select one subject under test this time, mobile money operator 1. And I need to select the URL that my system can be accessed at. Again, this is fully plug and play. So as long as my system is accessible over the internet somehow, this is fine. I'll leave encryption off for now because I don't want to confuse my systems too much. So I will call this one self-test session. And I'll select that same test case again. Click next. The URL that my system, Mobile Money Operator 1, should use to communicate with Mojaloop is given to me here. So I can go ahead and copy that URL, and off screen, I'm going to configure my live system to communicate. That's now set up. So my system will now send messages to Mojaloop through the test platform. We have this notion of environments, and this is helpful for the simulators to be able to send correct, realistic looking payloads. So I can create any sort of key value pairs, but we've also have this concept of group environments, which allow you to reuse environments throughout several sessions, throughout several users within this group. So I'm here representing a new DFSP called Plum FSP, and my administrator has already set up an environment for me with the FSP ID that the switch has allocated to me, and also a demo phone number that I should use for testing. So this is all pre-configured for me very helpfully. So I can go ahead and click confirm and then look at this test case again. And now I haven't got the big run test case button anymore because it is my responsibility as the Mobile Money Operator 1 to send this message, this post quotes, to start things off. So I will log into my Mobile Money controller and go ahead and send that request, and hopefully the rest of the flow should follow after. So if I now return to the test runs, we can see this one's been started. And if I scroll down, I can see that we've got lots of the green dots that we had before, but we've got 2 red dots, notably in steps 1 and 5, which was my responsibility. So if I click through onto those, you can see all the assertions are correct, except for this first one, was it encrypted? And obviously the Mojaloop test case, or the test case that we've set up here, is expecting an encrypted connection, and I haven't selected, I haven't set up encryption. I haven't set up the MTLS connection. And so it's not a blocker. I'm still able to proceed, and I can still test the logic of my implementation, which is super helpful. But at the same time, I shouldn't be under any illusion that everything is okay because I still haven't encrypted that connection. So we can do that. Now that I'm ready and confident in the logic, I can add encryption quite easily. So I will edit this session, and where previously I had left use encryption off, I will just turn that on. Now I need to provide some certificates for the test platform to communicate with my with Plum FSP. I could upload them one by one, or again, we have these group certificates, which allow my system administrator to upload them once for me to use in my test sessions. So I'll go ahead and just select this Plum FSP secure server set. And now the test platform knows how to communicate with my system. Now this URL that I previously entered is not actually set up for an MTLS connection. So I will replace it with this other one instead and click update. Now, if I return to the test case, it's all very well the test platform can now talk to Plum FSP and send messages over an MTLS connection, but we also need to secure the reverse direction. Plum FSP needs to talk to the test platform using a secure encrypted connection. And I can do that now by downloading these certificates that are the test platform certificates. And I can then install those within my FSP. So again, doing that off screen now quickly. And once that's done, I should be able to send my message again. So here it goes, sending off the quotes and the transfers. And if we refresh this page, we should see one more test run. No, I didn't update the URL. So using the, try one more time, send the quotes, and the transfer should follow. And return to the test runs. Here we have the message is successfully encrypted, which is great. So we've been able to gain confidence now that our system is both logically behaving correctly and also is able to make an encrypted connection over MTLS with the test platform. So I now have reasonable confidence in my implementation. However, there might be a case where I want to go a little further than the test case that's already been set up. So for example, in the Mojaloop specification, we have the extension list field, which can be used for various things. Amongst others, it could be used for KYC practices. So I might have decided in my implementation to send in the first step some KYC details, and I want to check that my implementation is sending those correctly. And we can do that using custom test cases. So if I click up here and move on to test cases, I can see this test case that I created earlier is it's a Plum FSP test case. So I've created a test case for my own consumption, and it's identical. I just copied the one that we were just running. And what I want to do now is to edit the test case to reflect the KYC information. So I'll click edit, move on to the test steps, and see step one. This is from me to Mojaloop. I want to enforce that I'm correctly sending the KYC information. So I'll edit that first step. And here under the test request scripts, these are where all those assertions are stored. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new assertion called KYC data provided. And the rules are specified using a reasonably intelligible syntax, I think. So what we want to say is that the body dot extension, plus a comma, extension dot zero dot value. So this is the value of this first extension. And I want to make sure it is either GB or FR to make sure that the nationality is one of these two supported nationalities. So I can click add, and then I'll save that script. At the same time, I want to make sure that in the step 3, which is a message that's being sent from MMO2 to Mojaloop, the response, the callback to my initial request, I want to make sure that Mobile Money Operator 2 is passing that information back to me. And because this is a simulated environment, it's very easy for me to do that as well. I don't need to coordinate with anyone. I can simply update the test case. So I'll scroll down to this request body here. And so this is the body template that is being sent. And you can see we've got some reasonably sophisticated templating going on here. but that's still very easy to update it. So I can add a new field, extension list. And all I want is for Mobile Money 2 to spit out the extension that it previously got. So I'll just second step request body.extension, just retrieve that value and spit it out as JSON. So I'll add that, and that will be enough to tell my Mobile Money, the simulator, to send that KYC information back. So I'll update that and finally publish. And now if I return to that self-test session that I previously created, I can edit the test cases that are in use. I'll remove the previous one and I'll use the Plum FSP one. And you'll see this padlock, meaning that this isn't accessible to everyone on the platform. This has been restricted to me and to Plum FSP. So I've got a private test case that I can use. So click save, and now I need to execute that test case once more. So I will send that request on its way and refresh the test runs page. And we see this incomplete test run. But we can see, notably in step 1, we've got this new assertion, this KYC data provided assertion. And you can see it's verified that GB was correctly passed in by my implementation. So that's good. And if I move on to step 3, which is the message that's being generated by Mobile Money Operator 2, and I scroll down to the request, again, I can see that the extension list has been correctly forwarded, which is good because it means that my implementation now has a more realistic idea of what's going on, and I've got full control over that. So if I want to test any edge cases, I can do that without having to disturb the hub operators. And so hopefully that should also simplify that onboarding process to allow the support team to focus on the process, the parts of the process where they're really needed. So that's what I wanted to show you about the custom test cases. Now, at this stage, Plum FSP is very confident of their implementation. They've gone above and beyond, created their own test cases, and they're ready to join the live network. So to do that, the hub operator enforces a strict process. You have to complete a certification session before you can be approved to participate in the live network. So if we create a certification session this time, and we mentioned earlier that instead of having full control over the test cases, we've got a guided process instead. So I've got this questionnaire that can be set up by the hub operators, asking which use cases do I want to test. I'm just going to select P2P again, and I'm just going to focus on the positive test cases, so none of the edge cases for today. Click Next, click Confirm. And so again, I want to test my own system, but this time let's also include a live Mojaloop installation as well. So we're going to have not just our system, but a bit of an integration test with a live switch. The remote operator is still going to be simulated in this case. So I need to include those URLs. Again, I'm not going to worry about the certificates for the sake of time today. So there is my Plum FSP implementation. And here is the Mojaloop installation that we're going to use. Click Next, give it a name, and you can see, as I mentioned, we haven't got control over the test cases that are being used today. We can only use the one that have been assigned by the hub operators for this process. So click Next, and again, I need to configure my system to talk to this new test session. And at the same time, we need to configure Mojaloop, the live Mojaloop installation, to talk to the test session as well. So this is a one-time process that would need to happen when you onboard a new DFSP to ensure that the switch actually can communicate with the test platform instead of talking directly to the hub, to the DFSP operator. So I'm just setting that up off screen. We're going to use the same test environment as we have before. So Plum FSP is going to send a message to test FSP. The difference is these two need to be real FSPs that have been set up inside the switch. And again, I'm going to use that same number. So I'll click Confirm. And so because this is a certification session, we've got a slightly different interface here. The first thing to notice is this session info at the top. We're being very explicit. Right now, your session is ready, and it's your responsibility to execute some test cases. So I can do that as before. I can go in, I can select my test case URL, add that to the to my implementation, and go ahead and execute. So I'll send that quotes request, and then we'll refresh the page. And we'll see this is an incomplete test case. It's now completed, and so this is now happily all still green. We can see that despite the fact that my messages are no longer going through a simulated switch, they're going through the real switch, everything still passes. So my early testing has paid off, and it's made it very easy now that I'm connected to a real switch to proceed. So I can return to the test session overview, and the session status has moved from ready to in execution, having recognized that I've started to execute some test cases. So as soon as I'm ready, and I am now because I'm happy that all my test cases have passed, I can go ahead and click Submit Results, and that will submit the results. It means I can't execute these test cases anymore. The results have been frozen as they are, and they've been sent to a platform administrator to review. So if I drag over a admin window, I can see down here, I've got this certification sessions link, and I can see there is one certification session that's been created by Christopher Little. So I can click through to that, and I can see all the test results. I can see the answers that they gave. I can click through to any of the test runs. I can click through to their test executions. I can see the exact messages that they sent. And I can see that they sent that extension list with the KYC data, for example. And I can click through to the degree that until the point that I'm confident that they are behaving correctly and that they aren't going to cause any problems if I integrate them into my live network. And so once I'm confident, I can either approve or I can decline the session. So in this case, I'm going to decline and say, provide a reason, need to also run, say, the PISP test cases to be approved on the system. So that session has now been declined. And if I returned to my original Plum FSP user, I can refresh the page and see that status has been declined. I received an email saying your results aren't good enough. And so at this point, I will be invited to create a new certification session to address any problems that were encountered until the point where the session is good enough, and then it will be approved by the hub operator, and they can be onboarded back onto the system, back onto the live system. So switching back to the slides briefly to wrap up, we've made some pretty significant changes with this new release, focusing on this, as Bruno mentioned, this schema certification to allow for a predictable process, to allow for a lot more independence from the DFSP to perform tests for themselves without needing to bother the hub operators and take up those precious resources. And also to give them full control over not just their own system and not just their own tests, but also the behavior of the remote simulators. So as we said, the system is free, open to use. It's on GitHub, and we'd love to get anyone else to join in, take a look, and see what you think. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bruno. Chris, Bruno, do you want to have any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's it. I'm not sure if we have any questions that people may ask over the chat. I was not keeping an eye there, but we can always follow up the discussion on the discourse as well. So then we don't over extrapolate the time.
Yeah, there is a question on discourse from Michael. I'll let you hop on there and respond to it. Michael says it doesn't need answering now, but for the record, I think just jump in and answer in case anybody else wanted some clarity, just permanent record. Thanks so much, Bruno and Christopher. We'll see you guys in a short bit.